My name is Vernon Ross, and I am an assistant wardrobe supervisor at American Ballet Theatre. I've worked at American Ballet Theatre for a total of 14 years. Started in 2006 as a dresser for principal male dancers, and now I'm the assistant wardrobe supervisor for the principal male dancers, and I oversee their costumes. I started off taking dance at a relatively late age. I started at 16 and I started taking jazz and modern dance. Ballet was not really very accessible for me in Baltimore City, and hip hop wasn't an option then. So I kind of focused on jazz, modern, and African dance. When I turned 17, I started studying ballet at the Peabody Conservatory of Music, and was not necessarily a stimulating and very receptive environment. There weren't many Black men, young boys, taking dance in Baltimore, especially ballet. And so I wasn't received as other peers in the ballet world. And so I decided, after I graduated from the University of Maryland, to move to New York to study at the Dance Theatre of Harlem. I had the fortunate opportunity in 1980 to see Dance Theatre Harlem perform at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. And they were holding auditions for one of the ballets that they were going to be performing, Firebird, and they needed 8 men to be supernumeraries for the ballet. I decided to audition, and when I got to the audition, there were probably 75 guys from all backgrounds, many who, of course, I did not know because I came all the way from Baltimore to do this audition. And I was selected as one of the 8 supers to do the ballet, which everyone kept saying, that's phenomenal, that's phenomenal. Well, I went on to be a super for the week in Washington, D.C. And at the last performance, there was a reception, and I was talking to one of the ballerinas, and I told her, this has been a life-changing experience for me, and I really think that I want to move to New York to study dance. And so she went on to tell me what I needed to do, who I needed to talk to at the school in order to make that happen, which I did. And in February of 1981, I relocated to New York, a fish out of water, not knowing what I was going to get myself into. I didn't even really know where I was living at the time. I didn't have a place to live, but as God would have it, I met a young man whose family had an extra room, and they offered me a room to stay with them in Washington Heights, and I didn't have to pay rent. So I was at Dance Theatre Harlem in the school for 3 years. And that was how I decided to transition from going to school for psychology, receiving a bachelor's of science degree, and studying to be a professional dancer in New York. That transition is probably one of the most sometimes difficult topics for me to discuss. As I just said, I was in the school, it was a 4-year program. I was in the professional training program, and we received a small stipend, and our tuition was paid for under the scholarship. And in my 3rd year, I learned the disappointing and frustrating news that I was not going to be accepted into the touring professional company. And this decision came from the artistic director, Arthur Mitchell. And I was devastated. I had been dancing with the ensemble, the school was the name of the company, and many of my close peers who were male got positions as apprentices in the company, and I was not given one. Well, I knew I had two options. One, I could quit or stay the next year, finish it out, and then just audition and try to see what was out there for me. But I really had little faith in dancing at any other company because, let's face it, every student that came to Dance Theatre of Harlem, in the back of their mind, their goal was to become part of that company. And when I was told that that was not a reality for me, I started just thinking of what I would do, what I would not do. And about a week after I was given that notice, I was asked by the executive director to come into Arthur Mitchell's office. And I was like, oh God, well, this is it. He's going to tell me just to leave. Don't come back next year. So I was really nervous and timid. And I went into the office and I said, yes, Mr. Mitchell. And he said, young man, I want you to start working with Zelda Wynn. And Zelda Wynn, for those that don't know, was one of America's first Black dress designers. She had a small boutique and she made couture gowns for Natalie Cole, Eartha Kitt, Nancy Wilson. I mean, the list goes on. Any Black superstar, female, she was making gowns and dresses for them. And I knew Mrs. Wynn because I had been in the school for 3 years, and Mrs. Wynn was not a nice person. She was not one that you could have small talk with, and she was really hard to just get to know and have a conversation with. And so I was like, this is really a sign that I need to do something different because he's throwing me to the wolves. And I had no experience in wardrobe. I was a dancer. I came from college to dance and I knew nothing about behind the scenes. Well, he said to me, I would be going on tour and I had like 2 or 3 days to say yes or no. Well, I had a conversation with the ballet mistress, Lorraine Graves at the time. Lorraine was someone who I'd become very close with. And I said, Lorraine, I said, you know, I'm kind of devastated. I don't know if you heard, but Mr. Mitchell is taking only 3 guys and I'm not one of the ones. And pretty much he's offering me a position to work with Miss Wynn. And I don't know why. I said, you know, why did he ask me to do that? She says, Vernon, there must be a reason. And I would recommend that you say yes. You can travel, you'll make money, you'll see parts of the country that you would never experience on your own. And you can take class every day with the company. That's a perk. You can take class with the professional company and warm up. So after a couple of days, right on the day that I had to give the notice, I went into his office and I said, Mr. Mitchell, I'll try it for the first tour. And if I like it, then we can talk about it. But I'm not 100%. This is a match for me. And the rest was history. Being that we are in the midst and throes of celebrating Black History Month, and you mentioned something about pioneers and people sort of making history. I feel very honored and privileged to have had the opportunity, even though at the time it probably did not seem like it would be something lucrative or something that would be fruitful to me in my career. However, as a wardrobe assistant, I was given the responsibility under the tutelage of Arthur Mitchell to learn how to dye flesh tone tights and dye and paint ballet slippers and pointe shoes. You know, you really have to sometimes sit back and think and realize why certain things happen. And this was during a very historic time in a historic movement that I was asked to participate in something like this and had no idea at the moment that 40 years after the fact, this would be something that people are now trying to find ways to broaden and improve diversity in dance in general, not only classical ballet, but in dance. And I'm speaking specifically of tights and shoes for dancers of color and how to make them feel inclusive in the dance world. And I had the responsibility of standing over 20, 30-gallon pots of boiling hot water and coming up with concoctions of colors to fit. We had eventually got it down to 6 flesh tone colors that we kept as our inventory. This was a tedious, laborious, unpleasant task that I was resentful of, I hated, and I thought that this was all part of Arthur Mitchell's way of getting back to me, because in the 70s, there was a young lady who decided she was going to wear flesh tone pantyhose over top of her pink tights because she didn't like the idea of wearing pink tights. And that was really the brainchild for Arthur Mitchell, deciding that he wanted his dancers of color to wear tights and shoes that were the same color of their skin. And his reason and thought was, in classical ballet, the end result and what all dancers strive for is a beautiful line. And if you have a black or dark skin torso, and then you have these pink or white tights on, and then a pink pair of pointe shoes, when you extend your leg and foot, you don't get a continuous line. He thought that it actually stopped at the hip. And he said, I am going to be a pioneer and change that. And so he started requesting that we dye these tights within house, which was my job. And I was young and I had no idea of what really dyeing involved and what, colors made sense. And it took, years to finally come up with the formula. And I was part of that. I was part of that. I was part of that history-making process that now manufacturers like Capezio, Blocks, Frieze of London are starting to introduce and offer shoes and tights for people of color. And this is historic. And I'm happy to now be at ABT and be a part of this national institution. And hopefully we'll see this historic movement just continue to flourish and grow, and that we will all one day feel inclusive and good about it. So I do feel like a pioneer and part of history. And thanks to Arthur Mitchell for that. A lot has changed. And I smile because I'm comfortable and I'm actually excited to see a lot of the change and progress that has begun to take place in the field of dance, the world of dance. When I was a dancer many years ago, I had no choice of what color tights or shoes that I could wear. For boys, it was mostly black leather or canvas ballet slippers or white. And many times if we wore black tights, we wore black socks, or if we wore white ballet slippers, we wore white socks. So that was like the uniform: a white shirt, white t-shirt, black tights, white socks, and white ballet slippers. If you had black ballet slippers, you wore black tights and black slippers. But when it was time to perform, many times my peers would wear pink slippers to match their skin tone, and I would have to wear black. And I actually thought it was the norm. I wasn't devastated by it, but it wasn't until I started getting older and realizing that they were making shoes slowly in flesh tone colors, especially ballet slippers, but they were never ever in dark complexions for people of color. You kind of build up wall and armor for yourself, because if you really are serious about your profession and being a professional dancer, many times you have to let certain things just roll off your back or your shoulder. And I wasn't going to not continue the work that was needed to be a professional dancer and have a professional attitude. But it was challenging because a lot of times my peers were white, and I just thought it was the norm. So as I got older and I started to see these baby gradual steps of things starting to change, I must say that there's hope, and it gives me hope. And I'm just hoping that it continues to even improve more, so that this whole issue of dancers not having flesh tone ballet slippers or point shoes, tights, will become a thing of the past.